Reißmann from Bento is going to introduce us to these conspiracy theories. Applause for Ole, please. Hi. Thank you so much for the warm welcome. If you are waiting for Hakan, Germany's leading guy for internet theories, he may have thought of something else. Sorry for everybody who showed up for him. He'll come the next year, and sorry if I do this horribly wrong. So now we have half an hour for unbelievable internet stories and what is behind them. The lead publisher from Bento, the young, brutally good-clicking website from Spiegel Online, and whenever we're talking about unbelievable stories, Jonathan Frakes can't be far off. Some of them know him as Commander Riker from... And in 1998 to 2002, he had a TV show called The X Factor, where he took unbelievable stories that he would tell, where we later on had the internet for that. But I mean, in 1998, we weren't that far along, were we? Who doesn't know how X Factor works? No problem. We have a short use case, and I'll show you what we want to do. In the show X Factor, there's a mysterious studio, there's fog, there's candlelight, obviously fake fog. And then John Frakes comes from the back and enters the set with a shadow and with a very deep, mysterious voice. He starts talking, and he talks about these stories. He introduces it to the audience and prepares the audience for the fact that they're going to see something unbelievable. And then he asks these questions. In your critical eyes, is this going to stand? Is this how this happened? Or do you have dark doubts of whether or not this story is truth? This is one of those truths. Dangerous, inherit. And Markus Söder just became minister, and then the Bavarian... And the foundation came up, and now all of a sudden they come up with a coin where you can have Markus Söder in gold, and you would now have the question: is this truth, or is this golden coin really the truth? Now I need your vote. Is it true? True. I mean, this was only a trial round. You can believe this story. Apparently, it cost €3.50 on the internet, and Markus Söder got it because back when he was a financial minister, he did so well for his people, and then they just wanted to say thank you with a gold medal. This is how it works. This is how X Factor works. And now I'm going to up you one more, and we're going to talk about what's behind. Why are these stories there? Why are we even wondering about it? And now with Markus Söder, the first hint I would give is more absurdity is always possible, and we kind of live in a world where we can't differentiate between, is this postillon like the Onion, or did this really happen? Something like this gold coin is, of course, that must be satire, and then it turns out it isn't. But what does this really say about the world that we live in? Because our first reflex is that the difference between satire and Markus, God Chancellor in Bavaria with a golden coin, is not really that easily differentiated. So what does that do with us? All right, so we have this mechanism. We've seen it once. And we're going to show stories that move on this very thin line. On the first gaze, they might be plausible. They might seem plausible, but then, and now, in the next 25 minutes, you're going to find out the truth. The next story we're going to call SMS from the Grave. By the way, all his story titles are quotes from the 3 question marks. This is the freight room of a traveling bus, and a 21-year-old student on the bus sends a cry for help on Yodel and where else. And she says, I am in Carrington, and I put my suitcase on the bus, and nobody hears me. And now she's driving, And then there's this other silent hint, the small hint, in this freight of the bus. There's a small thing that's only separates the freight room of the bus with the ones where the passengers are traveling. And now comes the question, is it true or is it not true? You're right, you're correct. Another picture where the police shows up. After 60 kilometers in the freight room of the bus, the person is taken out of it. But what's part of it? And a too good story. I mean, the stories that end up on the internet are kind of too good. And this time they could have kind of called the cops and asked if they really sent out a cop car, and then they really tell you, yes, we did go there and we took a person out of the freight room of the bus. Except maybe somebody voluntarily sat down there and they just wanted to kind of get some fame on Yodel, and then it starts. So the second story that's part of this is that Yodel is the new thing. Who would have known about, if you're in a personal situation of harm, or if you want to get possibly a lot of fame, you don't move to Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter, but to Yodel. So Yodel, the new thing. Sometimes things happen where truth or fake are not really the correct terms to be applied. They're just unbelievable to us as humans. The next story is the magical mirror. And it happened, there was a group of people that work in London in an office, and they hear and find out on the internet that Facebook listens to us so that they can give us the perfect advertisement right after. So these people in the office, they come up with the idea, we have to falsify this. We have to do an actual experiment if that is true. So two of these colleagues, Lizzie and Amelia, for the first time in their first life, talk about babies and pretend that Lizzie might be pregnant, and they talk, and they agreed in a script, and they talk about diapers. They talk about pregnancy tests. They write about protection and apps. And then there's other examples where you can have these people where they have never added anything. And what happens 2 minutes later? Lizzie is on Facebook and sees an advertisement, and it's exactly this one. It's an app that's called Natural Cycle, where you can find out when are your fertile days. So Facebook then targets this ad to exactly the subject that she had just previously talked to with anyone ever. So, and she's never Googled this before. And then next thing that Lizzie decides to do is that she doesn't just glue the camera, but also jank out the microphone, because she now knows Facebook listens to her. There was never, in this office, there was never any talk on kids and protection. So is it believable? Do you believe that it happened exactly like this, or are we lying? You're right. The story is untrue. And the explanation comes from psychology. It's about cognitive distortion. And in this specific case, that's called frequency illusion. In this specific case, that this commercial, maybe Lizzie was already shown to, but she was trained to not really pay attention to the commercials. And now all of a sudden, when she's sensitive towards this, she sees it, and then she thinks that she makes these two as a coherent connection where there isn't one. So Lizzie told Facebook how old she is, where she lived, and this Facebook ad, you can see it was put to a lot of people who are comparably in their demographics to Lizzie. But what actually is behind this? The first point is nothing is impossible. On the one hand, like, it could be true. And I mean, currently, We have a whistleblower that talked about Cambridge Analytica and that talks about, I mean, technically, yes, Facebook could also listen. He doesn't know if they do it, but he runs around and he gives interviews and tells everyone who wants to hear it and who always suspected it but never really wanted to know. On principle, it's possible. Facebook 2016 already publicly said that they are obviously, of course, not doing it, but then there were all this Snowden stuff where it became a lot more apparent of what's possible. And then there's stories where people buy expensive headphones from a company called Bose, 350 euros. And when you guide them via the app, and you know that these headphones kind of remember what you play and listen to and what kind of music you listen, and they then send that to the internet. And we all know that nothing's impossible. On the one hand, we know that, but on the other hand, even if Facebook isn't doing that, Facebook learned a lot from this. Then, because we've all heard these stories, and we all kind of think it's plausible, and they could do it, but they probably won't. And then for the future, this means, I mean, even if some people are upset now, it doesn't really hurt, does it? We're still on Facebook, even though that's possible and plausible, and we don't take any consequences from this. And the benefits still outweigh the danger. And that is really a shocking news for people who are really like into data protection. And while we're on the topic of Facebook, can this story be true?
We come to Mark Zuckerberg. Let's call it Ghost on the Web. At a developer conference for 1 or 2 days, he discovered his heart for journalism and gave a speech and said, we need common facts where we can agree on and rely on, because then we can discuss about the real and the good life. But if we don't have a common fact basis, that doesn't work out. And that's why he committed himself to journalism and to facts that are there and that are important. And he appreciated the media. And now the question, I don't know if you followed that. Is that thinkable? Is it possible? Maybe this is stretched too far, but what's with his statements, or is this just a lot of nonsense? It's not true. At least I would pledge for that, because people that have been there started asking him, and if this is also important with the facts, why does Facebook doesn't work like that? That journalism is appreciated there and valued there, but the feelings are taken into account and not the facts. And what Facebook does with groups and communities and engagement and interaction is honored. That's all targeted on emotions and on single persons, not on the neutral facts, and they are just lost and left aside, standing aside. And a lot of people just see less news on Facebook, because after all this trouble with Russia, Facebook thinks like, that's too much struggle there. Let's have less of that. And next story. Under high voltage, software developers had to look at Instagram, and they noticed if they post a picture on Instagram, they don't see likes instantly. Normally you would see I post an attractive picture with the right hashtags, and the interactions should start immediately, and they notice, it's not really happening that way. We need to reopen the app after a few minutes, and then we see, something's happening there. And they came to the conclusion Instagram is reducing on purpose the access rates to pictures. And Instagram tries to force people to open the app more often, and if you don't see likes in the beginning, you need to open the app again and again and again, because at some point something needs to happen. and so you can train your users that are addicted to likes to use the app more frequently. And now there would be Jonathan Frakes approaching through the fog. Is this true, or do we just make this up? Wrong. But what's behind that? The lack of technical knowledge. There are a lot of people that can try this out and see, yeah, it's okay, it's working like that for me. And there's a plausible explanation for that. It's a worldwide network with millions of users and a lot of data. And so if you have a bad data connection, that the likes are delivered in real time, that can't really be. But the Instagram told themselves they try to deliver the likes as fast as possible. And on the other hand, that's what the company says. And if you mistrust the company and think the company is lying to us, why should you believe the company and what the company says and says that everything's fine? Next story, out of the internet, unbelievable. We see here the founder of a startup in Frankfurt. It's called SafeDroid, and the starting idea was that a lot of things you do in your everyday life, you save some money. So you go to a store and the app is saving €5. I get my salary and the app saves €5 for me. It's a nice idea. And at some point the motivation was gone and the users weren't there already. So in the fintech bubble there was another topic, blockchain. So they said like, okay, let's just put a cryptocurrency on top of our idea and our startup. And they founded SafeDroid and found 35,000 users that put in 40 million Ethereum in there. And they at some point they had really huge amount of cryptocurrency and people believed in it, in the idea. And then the founder of the app shows himself on Twitter with an Egyptian beer in his hand, and some of the people that had trust in him found out where this picture has been taken, and the background you see landscape, and you can see what it is, and you figure out he's in a Mövenpick hotel resort on the Red Sea in Egypt, and it seems to be an exit scam. So one of the cryptocurrencies that didn't really do it, and one of the few currencies where the people have just criminal energy and made up or prank. And in this case, that's true. Up until that, everything happens like that, and then it's wrong, because in the end it was just a PR stunt, and in the end he just wanted to have more recognition for his cryptocurrency, and all his users were really freaked out because of their money they've spent there. What's behind that? FOMO, fear of missing out. There are a lot of stories up into the New York Times that are shown there that have Bitcoin sweaters, and the headline is like, everyone's getting hilariously rich, but you're not. And so cryptocurrencies we're currently in a phase related to cryptocurrency where a lot of people think there's easy money there, and if I'm not joining now, I'm really angered later. And there's, of course, Sparkassenhate, which is a local bank in Germany, a small bank basically, and so basically you have to pay fees, and the rates are really low, and so the system we used to is not really taking care about the small savers, and yeah. Now we see a dancing Cyberman. Another internet mythos. It's about robots, and there are a lot of studies out there that want to show us with using a lot of data and numbers which jobs will vanish in the next few years, and we are living off packet delivery jobs and strawberry pickers and Amazon logistic storehouse workers. In my quarter in Hamburg, a small robot is driving around with 6 wheels, and he's delivering wine and later maybe pizza. And with this internet myth, the question is, did we make up these studies, or are we really heading towards this big robot revolution of the workforce? No, it's wrong. At least I would say it's wrong. And now the but, what's behind that? Currently, robots are more expensive than people right now. And as long as Amazon finds workers that are doing the job for very little money and are not organized in workers' unions, or are kicked out if they are organized in workers' unions, because guest workers are doing that, this will continue. So why they should invest in robots there means robots are about to come, but the first jobs they will take over are the more expensive jobs. So like lawyers or doctors or everything that we're saying, we are safe because it's just the stupid jobs and low qualified jobs. But in the end, both will be right, but in midterm, probably first the smart ones and then the dumb jobs. Next story, the risky ride in Thüringen. In IKEA, the name for a product has been changed. For the toilet brush with the holder in dark brown for 99 cents, it's called Höcke. He's a major figure in the AfD, right-wing party. Did we come up with this story, or is this happened at all? Real or wrong? First, the good answer, I guess, the good news is there is an IKEA actually in Thüringen, in Erfurt. But on the other hand, what's behind that? Hey, the sympathetic Swedish furniture company that has at some point produced stuff in Eastern Germany, and whose founders are said had connections to neo-Nazis, is not positioning themselves against the AfD, and on the other hand, we are amused by that. It's our satire, but there are a lot of people outside of this Republica bubble that are streaming fake news, and they say, hey, we have funny pictures here, we think it's satire, and where we say, hey, that's fake news. So it's a filter bubble thing, but we are sharing that. Thank you for your attention. We have one more thing. We ask ourselves what's fact and what's fiction. How can we be sure that nobody is fooling us, or we are fooled by something what we want to believe? See for yourself how it is in the next thing. Since 2012, there's a pioneer of his profession, Manfred Spitzer. He wrote a popular book, Digital Dementia, and he warned from the negative impact of internet and social media, especially social media. And he was loved that a lot, and there are a lot of articles in the feuilleton and in gamer forums on the web, and he tells about persons that are on the internet more than 3 hours per day, or sitting in front of a screen, and everyone who's sitting in front of a screen for their job, and then later spend time in the net using Netflix or whatever, would be really, really addicted to internet, according to his definition. But now we're a bit. Back then we laughed about him, but now we're a bit further, and now 2018, we learned a bit And the latest news are something like that. They're from now. Internet addiction, how you see that you're sick, internet addiction, smartphone, online games, Facebook, everything about the new addiction. And they find out that 100,000 adolescent people in Germany are addicted to the internet and sick, in a sense that a doctor says we need to stop that and interfere with that. Yeah, and the articles read like internet addiction, new addiction, make a test how you see that you're sick. And now the person responsible for dealing with drugs from the German government can't say anymore we don't have anything. We now have the scientific facts. There's an ICD code for this sickness. ICD is a large rule set where basically standardized sickness symptoms are in there, and code F63 there's this sickness internet addiction. And now the question again. Damn! Now I spoiled it. It's wrong, yeah. So what's behind that? Well, there are studies and there are these articles about internet addiction, but still there are psychologists that say, yeah, you just did a questionnaire and you have the wrong base assumptions and there's nothing really recognized, so you're just summing up things into a sickness that has been created for gaming addiction, and that people are in the internet. Sure, this affects people, but you can't really talk about internet addiction. So the question is, what's behind that? Why are we talking about that? Why are we still or again talking about internet addiction? Of course, it's all about jobs. Addiction and addiction sicknesses, they're not a sexy topic. We know what addiction is and we know what's happening on there. And there are a lot of people, they need new jobs and thinking about new programs and wanting access to new money and want to create something where you can put your teenager for 6,000 euros per week to treat his internet addiction. And of course, behind that, there's this feeling that the internet is just too much for us adults, and this has to influence the teenagers, and so we don't just talk and question the teenagers and adolescents. We just say you're addicted. Time's running. That's has been my unbelievable internet stories. What we take away. It can always get more crazier. Yodel is the new thing. Nothing is impossible. Everything doesn't matter. Bitcoin's, not a thing. Robots take away our job, and Nazis are people, and internet addiction doesn't make us high. Thank you very much.